around for conference week. Um, start.
All right. First of all, I want to say you guys are all getting awesome at introducing yourselves by your name and your team number. When you get to events, that's exactly how people are going to start to know you. As far as your school goes, most teams, I say I've been doing this for 10 years, and most teams, I don't even know which school they're associated with because they've developed their own image with their robotics team. So you guys are doing awesome at that. I look forward to meeting you guys in a couple of weeks. So, all right, so look at what we're going to be doing tonight. For the robot, we're going to be talking about a little bit about that build deadline, what you need prepared, what you need from the robot perspective, be prepared for events, that competition in your robot cart. Team management side, we're going to be talking about deadlines for awards, event volunteers, and event schedule. So, line of tonight's call. All right. So we'll say this every single week. If you do not have a moving robot, up now. If you broke a robot or it's not working because it's mechanically, electrically, or programmingly broken, we can help you. The sound. Okay. Well, if you guys need help, our emails and phone numbers are in the please feel free to contact us. I know a couple of guys we've met in person. A couple have made it out to our facility, Rush's facility, another veteran team's facility. We encourage you to do that. There's definitely no shame in entering with another team. That's what makes FRC such a great community. All right. Next week is our last call before bag day. So next week we will definitely be going more into detail on exactly what you need to do on bag night. We'll also be talking about withholding allowances and unbagged time. This week we'll cover all of those things. But tonight we're going to remind you that the robot must be in the bag 1 week from Tuesday. So go ahead and keep it. So you are in communication with other rookie mentors or rookie teams. Make sure you let them know that next week is definitely a very good week to actually be on the call, not just read the notes, because we'll be covering the specifics of that. And people who have questions, that's a great opportunity to ask them before your robot has to be in the bag. Next week is your last opportunity to ask questions. So make sure you guys are all on the call for next week. All right. So you should definitely be assembling whatever competition manipulator you're going to use at competitions. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about where people should be mechanically, and then Jason talk a little bit about where people should be electrically with their robot right now.
Sure. So, like I said, this week, mechanically, you guys, like we've already said earlier, have a moving chassis. You should be trying to really find your mechanisms that, whether you're dealing with the fuel, whether you're dealing with the gear or climbing, should be working what you expect out on the field so that this week and next week you can start debugging them. Make sure you start to use the robots in the way they're going to be used on the field. Make sure your driver isn't like standing and hovering over the robot when they're driving the robot to test a feature that may be 8 to 10 feet away from that robot and then move because, in the real field they're going to be behind the glass. Interesting thing that happens a lot is people don't realize, this actually makes the robot completely silent to the driver. So they can't hear motors spinning or, falling or, noises that don't sound right when you're in the field. So, but when you're in your facility, you hear all those sounds so you know when to shut something off or to stop doing something. So try to, put them in kind of those situations so you know what's going on. Try to debug them. Try to give your programmer some time actually go through and debug code. Quick thing before I turn it over to Jason to kind of talk more about the program. As a drive coach, one of the things I always try to make sure we do with our buttons, and we were actually just talking to our mentors and students about this, programming sections about this, is that first I like to have buttons that are either off when you're holding them or off when not holding them. Programmers will like to say, well, I can create a toggle for you, so you click this button and the runs, and it'll run forever, and you just got to click the button again to toggle it back off again. I'm not a fan of those types of buttons because in the moment on the field where you can't hear something going wrong or something happens, the student doesn't know how many times they press the buttons. They don't know if it's on, off, or what stage it's in. The button where you press it, it's on. You release it, it's off. It's more easier for the driver to kind of deal with that. So start thinking about, what button's going to be on the controller that are easy. Going to do anything other than just drive the robot. We try to make it where the sticks driver, they keep their thumbs on those sticks at all times. They never take them off, and they can only use their index fingers maybe on the bumper switches or the trigger switches for the driver. You don't want the driver to have to move their off of that steering stick to function and go back to it because they might get bumped or something during a match. Any questions about kind of mechanical, say your robot, that kind of stuff?
Just about control scheme, we're going to use the Logitech stick for control. Do you have any qualms, suggestions against that? We have kind of everything set up so that the actuators, it's not toggle. You press the button to actuate, you release it to back. We're using a pneumatic system for our primary driver, for our manipulator. But a lot about the gamepad. Do other people use the joystick, or is that crazy talk?
No, some people do. It depends on the game. The button that you have set up sounds like it's perfect of what it should be. The thing to consider is your sight lines this year. With a stick, you are going to be tied to wherever that joystick is mounted in your driver's station. If I have a 10-foot long pad, say, Xbox controller, I can walk 10 feet away from the driver's station wherever I want to be able to see better. A lot of people don't take advantage of this out on the field, is that your drivers can move. They usually don't move for whatever reason. They stand there like little statues in the same spot the entire match. But if they can't see, they can move 6 feet over to the left or 6 feet to the right to surround that game piece or around that robot or something of that nature. So personally, we like to use the gamepads because it gives us that freedom of movement. I've always kind of talked to people about is last year there's a huge tower, a castle that actually we're in one of the stations. I think it was like station 1 or 2. You could be on the right side of the tower because your tower was blocking that side of the field. So my driver was trying to play defense or something like that on an opponent, and instead of what she did, she squatted down and she looked through the logo of the vessel, because behind the driver's station you can kind of see through this little cubby hole or the little tombstone type hole, and she's driving the robot through the hole so she could see and play defense on the other opponent. She wouldn't be able to just squat down like that and actually do that maneuver. So that's my qualm against it, but maybe it doesn't matter because maybe it's the operator and they don't need to see the robot. It's the driver who needs to see it. But it's kind of to the driver what's more comfortable for them. Mentors have a tendency to like joysticks, and students, because not all they do, but a lot of them, you take a poll of your students in your team, and I would probably say that 90% of them play video games, and probably 90% of them or 80% of them have Xboxes themselves. They own them. So let's do it. Right.
Appreciate the input.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yes, joystick center left for team drive. One drives one side of the road, one side of the road. Sweet on that's worked out. I like the idea of having the mobility. I'll have to bring time get around stuff. That's years has been a problem getting the
asymmetrical field this year. That could be a factor.
your running. So yeah. You have your chassis running, you have your main electrical board all wired up and created, and everything up and just adding on additional speed controllers. So Dave, you have your solenoid block, and point you should be trying to implement any of your prototype mechanisms on actual competition robot. So get that transferred to there if you've done some prototype for the mechanisms, and then the control system put together. Probably that, if it hasn't been, some sensing. Depending on what you're doing, you may want to add some sensors to your robot. Things like if you're trying some type of a sensor to know that you've hit the top of the so you don't be driving your robot through the rope or through the at the top. So a couple other things to look at last week.
C570, we're not going to attempt the rope. Just wanted to focus on just on gears. Keep it simple. Do one thing. Do it well.
As a goal for you guys, to be totally honest, I think I should. Your first event, but by your second event, you should investigate and their climber. Like
okay.
This is from a straight up strategic standpoint. Each advance has a potential of 150 points just from climbing alone. I don't think you need it at your first event. If you go in the competition, more important factor will have either the point where
on when their first event is, though.
Sure,
Their event is
event.
week 4.
Can I ask a question about the climber?
Sure.
We are trying to climb, and we've got that done, and not rope, but just it works. It has a motor and it turns. But we can at with Velcro apparently, and so tell me about the rules. Can Velcro on the rope?
My understanding of using Velcro on rope from a legal standpoint is that you need to make sure that there's no metal and that kind of stuff, and you have to ensure that you're not using the Velcro to try to prevent, quote unquote, prevent fraying at just the bottom of it. So that means that you could take a piece of rope, take 2 pieces of Velcro that doesn't really necessarily need stitch or adhesive on the back, and spin that around another piece of rope, and would qualify as being a rope because it's sewn together. It's all made of material. It's not made from metal, and actually can stitch. From our own personal experience in testing, you can go to Depot, fairly soft, kind of nylon type rope, and you can get some Velcro. You have just the hooks, and that hooks can actually grab on to normal standard piece of rope. So it's almost the reverse of what you're saying, is instead of putting the Velcro on your rope, you put the Velcro on your lifting mechanism to grab the rope, and then climb with it. Those are the 2 ways you can use Velcro.
Okay, and I think that's the way they're doing it. I mean, I'm not doing it. The kids and the mentor are doing it. Okay, what they were questioning is, okay, saying this is a hook to Velcro that will hook onto a real rope. You can put Velcro onto your rope and the other side of the Velcro on your robot?
To go to Home Depot or some store and try to find the best way is the softest rope, something that's fairly soft, and then just take the hook Velcro, the one that actually has all the barbs, and test to see how it hooks onto that rope. And there's nothing saying that you like purposely wrap it and kind of rat in your hair, right? You wrap the rope so that it has all these fibers sticking out that want to hook onto the hook portion. And if you get like a wrap or two around your pulley,
then you're good.
So
and
back to the original statement. Go ahead.
No, what I'm thinking that they're doing is acceptable. So that's what we were trying to make sure of, is that we weren't just breaking rules the way we were trying to do it.
Yep. Sounds like it's good. Looks like it's good.
Yep. Okay. And it's a real rope. Someone said something about a ratchet strap, and I was like, I don't know if that qualifies as a rope.
Yeah, ratchet strap, as long as it's made once again cloth and there's no metal in it, a ratchet strap is considered rope according to the rules.
Okay. All right. One of the kids said something about ratchet strap, and I don't know. Okay. Good.
Yeah. And then back to I think it was Dave, your original statement about not being a climber. If you have a really, really good mechanism and you guys are like the best gear person ever and you're doing like 8 to 10 cycles a match, don't be surprised if like at an event you might have someone like select you and then say, hey, we noticed that you don't have a climber on it. Would you care if we help you put a climber onto your robot, that in eliminations you can actually be climbing, known as cheesecake.
I've read that term. I think you guys brought that up in a previous conference call.
Yeah, that's cheesecake. So.
But climbing is probably going to be the #1 cheesecake this year. And it's not a hard thing to do. Like, it is not a hard mechanism for you as a rookie team to put on your robot. If you are already confident in your gear, paint and delivery and scoring, really stretch to put on a climber. It's one. I don't know if you want to go through mechanically, like but it's not.
So this is actually a perfect segue into the topic of withholding allowance. So you have to back your robot on the 21st by midnight. After that, you will not be able to access your robot until the week prior to the event, and then you get someone back time. But you are allowed to withhold up to £1,000. You choose to withhold whatever you want. So you can choose to withhold maybe your gear mechanism, or your intake, or your shooter, or your climber mechanism. What you could do is you could put everything in the bag that you're done with and say, hey, we're going to bring in pounds. We don't know what it's going to be yet. We're going to bring in 30 pounds of a climber that we're going to work for the next week or two until our week 1 or week 2 event, and going to build a climber and come in with that so that we strap it onto our robot, and now we have a climber, and then you might get an extra week or two, depending on what your first event is, have that climber to go to that event. Make sure before you put it in the bag, you have some measurements of some of the key mounting locations that you plan on using for type of climber. The other is, with that holding allowance, if it's a commercially off-the-shelf available item and it's not assembled, it's just in pieces, not as an entire subsystem, you're allowed to not count that as your withholding allowance. So let's just say for a moment that, a bag motor with a 10-1 and a 7-1 to ratio, so you have a 70 to ratio overall to a versaplanetary. You have it disassembled and you walk in, none of that weight. 7-1,
bag motor.
10-1.
7-1.
Bag motor. Versaplanetary. You can bring that whole unit in, and that counts towards that 30 pounds of withholding. So the rest of your drum or your Velcro, even Velcro is off the shelf available. maybe your gussets or plates that you're going to use to mount it to your robot, those items, the only ones that'll count towards that 30 pounds. So, like I said, as a stretch goal for your team, if you don't have a climber by the end of build, maybe you do between, split up is you come up with a simple solution. And like that, I personally, I believe that you could design a completely off-the-shelf climber, completely off-the-shelf items, and all you need to do is cut a couple pieces when you get there, and it can mount on other people's robots. Like, I guarantee you that it's possible.
I guess I'm confused in the rules about how an off-shelf, not pre-assembled. Is that the sticking point? It has to be not assembled. That we can down that doesn't count towards our withholding.
Yeah, not
or it is
pre-assembled
pre-assembled
and not
okay.
Not pre-assembled and not modified. So
Not
so a good
manufactured in any way.
a good example is I don't know, a 1 by 1.2 inch aluminum tubing, right, and buy from a steel supplier. If you had in a 6 foot length, because that's the way you bought it, that is unmodified. As soon as you cut that and drill any holes into that, and that becomes a modified, and it's a custom part. It's no longer off the shelf. So if you come in, PVC is a good example. Is we 1 year is we had a design, that cheesecake design in 2014. We called it Shower Bot, and it all made out of PVC. We had working drawings and we had cut lengths. And if we ever needed to implement this on a team to be able to allow for us to get our first assist, this pulled out the working drawings. They pulled out the long sticks of PVC. They had PVC cutters, and they said, "Go, we're going to build Shower Bot." And they cut them all to the right size, glue them to the connection, strap it on their robot, and none of it counted towards their withholding allowance because none was custom. It was all commercially off of the available item.
How much? Thank you.
Is there a specific length have to be? Like, what is considered off the shelf? A 6 foot piece or what?
If you show what length we're able to buy it at, to say, hey, bought this length at 6 foot or 2 foot, or because you can go to Home Depot, you can buy a 2 foot section of PVC. So as long as you can show that, hey, we bought it at this length, that's what came. I think they're gonna be okay if like you bought it from them and they made one cut for you because it didn't fit in your vehicle. We bought it from Home Depot like this. There's not a lot of scrutiny for bringing kind of stuff in. Like you just got to be careful. Inspectors can question you on that. They can approach you about that. As long as you can kind of show that you bought those items and they weren't fabricated before you got there. It's a little bit of the honor system, more than anything.
Perfect. Right. I was wondering. Okay.
What to do is when an event and people start to question it and then be like, oh, wait, you machined those all beforehand? And then now back in our place, do they try to take it away from you because, you bought in illegal items? So make sure you don't have that, right? So.
Okay.
Any questions about other things like that?
Okay. All right. The next thing we want to talk about is what you need to be prepared for at your events with mechanical, electrical, and programming. This is kind of a list of things that you guys need to take into consideration of what you should bring with you for the competition. So mechanical, the first thing is tools. Basically, you want tools to fix on your robot. Depending on what kind of fasteners you use, you're going to want screwdrivers or drills, wrenches to take and put on those fasteners. You want basic tools like hammer, and if you guys want to jump in here a little because you're more adept at this. But
sure. I would say that the most common tools for fixing a robot are Allen wrenches and box wrenches. People will use socket head cap screws as their screw of choice. If you look at your kit apart chassis, that's all using socket head cap screws for the most part. Some of these stuff does use hex heads. Like I said, I'll say the fastener of choice is socket cap screws. Most people use like an 832 or 1032. And rivets is another extremely common thing. Buy a couple, 30-second rivets, 100 of them from Home Depot, get a rivet gun. It's great for fixing things on the fly. If you mount something, you drill a hole, put the rivet in, snap it together, and you're good to go, and they're super light. So.
I mean, you probably want to bring like a hammer, maybe a drill motor.
So the best thing to do is look at your robot. Take a robot and actually go through what's a tool that you would have to use on that robot to fix it. Whether one day look at every fastener and say, well, we need this tool to fix that one, we need this tool to fix that one, and make a small little toolbox of only the things necessary to fix that. So we'll bring more. People will bring a lot more than what they actually need. For the most part, you could do an inventory over your whole robot and figure out what tools are absolutely necessary to fix your robot.
Electrical stuff, you put on a small screwdriver. If you put it into your PDP or pull some connections on your windmill, like a wire cutter, wire strippers, that might be good stuff to bring too. And then zip ties. If you have cable ties, be sure to bring those. Oh, don't forget your battery charger.
Yeah. You're going to want to have a way to transport your robot, which I think is the agenda topics too. Is you want to go into this now or no?
Programming. What do we need for programming?
Make sure you have an Ethernet cable to combine together. If you're not able to use your Wi-Fi router in the pit, so if you're testing of anything in the pit, you want to have and I would also bring your USB cable just in case.
When you Ethernet cable, my recommendation is probably about a 25-foot Ethernet cable would be pretty good. If you plan to do long, extensive testing with autonomous, you might want to have a longer one. But I would say for most teams, 25-foot is a pretty size, and you're going to want to try to have that, maybe if you're near your drive station. That way, if you ever need next to your robot, you always have that handy. You could do a smaller one. We have a long one for testing on the practice field, and then we have a shorter one that we use just to connect to the robot when it's on our cart.
Back to mechanical, sorry. Spare parts, things that break. Elements that you think mechanically teams should be bringing extra of? I know like electrical, maybe speed controllers and motors. What do you think that they should probably buy one or two extra of and bring with them?
Anything that you think might, get jammed or stall. If you have some kind of shooter or intake that you have a motor and you're pushing it to its limit, and it might, if it gets jammed in a match and you can't shut it off, that might be the type of motors to bring placements, but also anything that extends outside of your frame perimeter. If you kind of have an intake that goes outside of that frame perimeter, you're going to want to have those pieces that attach to that maybe as spare parts. Because if it is outside your frame perimeter and outside of your bumpers, it's going to get hit by robots, or who knows, maybe even your drivers do the damage because of the lines this year. They try to maybe take a trip behind the really far off, spaceship or whatever it's called, and they don't realize where they're at, and they're running into walls and running into gear lifters and dividers, and they can't find out where they're at because they can't see where they're at. So anything that's going to be exposed like that, those are the types of things you're going to want to have replacement parts or anything that might look a little weak. There are times that teams will make things that are more or less disposable, where they're like, hey, this might break, but it's cheap to replace. It's made out of PC. If we snap it, next match we put a new one in and we're good to go.
Speed controllers, how many extra speed controllers should teams consider bringing or buying?
One or two. You shouldn't need to have a ton of them. Controllers are expensive. One or two isn't a bad idea. There are opportunities where if you don't have the money to have one, other teams will probably do their best to try to lend you one. Like I said, I think we try to have two at any given time. Like our count now for speed controllers actually on our robot is like 10 or 11, maybe 12 speed controllers this year. So having two extra isn't bad for us, but a lot of motors.
How many robot batteries do you think a team should have?
Two. You got two in the kit. You have the funds to buy a couple more. I don't know, let's say 4.
I'm in 4, ideal 6. You'll have people that will buy many more than that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I would think minimum of 4, because you need to be charging those batteries, and your time at districts are so fast, you might not actually have enough time for them to fully charge. So like I said, if
How long does it usually?
I want to say that's. Go ahead.
Usually take for a robot battery to charge?
It depends how much you drained of the match before. It can take 3 or 4 hours maybe to charge. It just depends. This is of course dependent on your robot. If your robot draws a lot of power to operate, you're going to need longer for them to charge up. If you have a lighter robot and maybe only a couple of drivetrain motors and a couple other items, you might need as much, but it's definitely having batteries isn't a bad thing. Like I said, I would say try to have 4 at minimum. 6 would be even better. We have 12.
So you can match about every hour and a half to 2 hours, and it takes 3 or 4 hours to charge a battery. So,
yeah,
I mean, you guys can do the math there.
Say match turnarounds that are, 20 minutes apart. So, I mean, it'll fluctuate. There'll be times that you'll in a match, then, you'll matches from then you'll be in another match. You only have enough time to swap the battery, switch your bumpers, and go back out on the field again. So, change your battery easy, too.
You'll play 12 occasion matches at each district.
Yeah, typically, like you do 8 on Friday, you do 4 on Saturday morning, and then the eliminations, and you go all the way. There's a minimum of 6 matches where you're playing back to back. That's where the 6 comes in. You need 6 batteries to make yourself through the elimination portion. Again, teams will help if you absolutely need to, but
Are specific robot batteries that you have to buy and use, correct? About $50 a piece through Andy Mark. Correct.
More than that. I think it's like $89 for 2. They sell them in pairs of 2. The other one you could do is, I think in Lansing, MK Batteries has a facility or a warehouse in Lansing. If you call MK Batteries up, tell them with the First Robotics team, they'll give you a First Robotics discount, and they'll give you a discount and shipping, and they'll send it to you. They're pretty quick. Those are the batteries we use. There is a section in the manual that tells you all the acceptable batteries. For the most part, it's an 18 milliamp hour battery, just like you got in your kit. So for every battery you buy, you need to make sure you have the Anderson power connection to connect to that and be able to plug in, once again, so you can hot swap those batteries in and out. You're not going to be able to use like alligator clips and clip those on to be able to run the battery in a match or something like that. Same thing with your chargers. You're going to want to use an Anderson power connector on your chargers. So when you get back to the pits, you plug them in the charger, they're charging, you unplug, plug it into your robot, operate your robot, and nothing fancy.
Questions on that? Jason just pasted all of the information on the legal batteries to use in the notes. So we'll include where you can go to MK Batteries and Andy Marks to get batteries. For you that have questions, you can do that. All right. Does anybody have any questions about what you need before we go into what you get for your pit? Touch on this, I think, last week or the week before, but it depends on the event how big your pit is. You should be getting emails from the event coordinator, which is one of the people that we talked about on last week's call. Pretty close to events now. They'll probably be sending out emails here pretty soon. In that information, it should tell you how big your pit will be there. But you always plan on your pit being the smallest that it can be at 8 by 8 feet. So they'll give you a table and they'll give you some tape on the floor, and that's pretty much all you get. You are responsible for bringing everything else. Lighting is a big thing usually in pits, because once you start getting your toolbox and everything else in there, it gets really dark. So you may want to consider bringing some kind of a light with you for your pit. And plan your display, your toolbox, your pit crew all around having an 8 by 8 foot pit. I'll say most events are either 9 by 9 square or 9 feet wide by 10 feet deep. That's your common dimensions. Again, some of them are very, very small. With States as large as States is going to be this year in a new location, we don't know how big the pits are there. I know past, when it was at Eastern Michigan University, they were teeny tiny pits. So don't plan in a 10 by 10. So you know how to fit all the things that we just mentioned, plus your robot cart, plus all your tools, plus all your people into a teeny tiny pit. Just take that into consideration before you go to an event. Do you have any questions about pit size or what to include in your pit?
I have a pit. I know you guys talk a lot about. You've talked before about displays. Displays aren't required, are they? I mean, we don't need to have a big expensive banner, or do we?
It is not required for you, but I will say that you should probably have something to identify who you are and where you're from. Whether you go to the store and get a poster board and your kids make a poster board for 50 cents, or you go to a place and have your team logo printed on a flag or a banner, even if it is simple as your team name, your team logo, and where you're from. Because at a lot of events, because you're a rookie team, people will not know who you are. And a lot of scouting goes on in the pit. And if you make yourself memorable by creating an image that teams remember when it comes to alliance selection, if you are not ranked high enough to be an alliance captain, people will be looking for alliance partners, and that is easy for them to find you. our years, we went and had a banner made each year that had our sponsors' logos on it, a team logo on it, and the year on it. And then we realized we were spending like $150 every single year to reprint a new banner. We went out in our community and got a set of tees donated to us, and we have a program load on it with a flash drive because every tee has a flash drive capability now. And we run a PowerPoint presentation on a TV that has our sponsors on it and has our team logo on it. So that's something that you go to maybe a local electronics store or someplace like that, or maybe your school has old monitors laying around. Something you could put in it to indicate who you are and who your partners are too. That's something to consider.
Thank you very much. Good information. It does. No, it's good actually, because I think, we've got access to tees and spare monitors. We can always just bring a laptop and hook something up and do that. That'll be the most cost-effective way to do it while still looking professional. So I think we might go that route. I appreciate the advice.
Yeah. All right. Any questions before we go? Robot cart. Clint, robot cart, go.
Robot cart. Yeah, sorry, I had on mute. With the robot cart, you're going to make sure that you have a way to transport your robot to and from the field. One of the things you're going to want to consider is that you'll probably have the robot on this cart. You're going to need to work on your robot. So a couple things to consider is, one, you probably want it up more at waist height. So when you're working on it, it's easy. You don't have to be bending over or sitting on the floor or kneeling on the floor. Makes it easy to access. The other, when your robot is on your cart, you're going to want to make sure that it holds the robot by the frame, not the wheels, so that if you were to run an autonomous program to test it, your robot's not going to drive off of your robot cart. People take signal beams, maybe go and capture the certain portions of the drivetrain or the frame to hold the robot up in the air so the wheels aren't touching. A lot of times people will also try to have like some storage, maybe to have a couple small tools that they need to fix their robot, that kind of stuff on it. So you need to make sure that your robot is going to be able to go through a doorway to go to and from the field. Some events, you're in giant gymnasiums that you never have to go through a doorway and you're fine. Then you might have to go through a 30-inch doorway. So the question is, what is your robot's orientation and volume size to make sure it fits through that door? So if you built a category A robot that is 36 by 40, you not fit through a third doorway. Now, if you were to tip it up on end, and because of the 24-inch height restriction, you could then go through the doorway. So if you don't take these things into consideration, you may not be able to actually go through doorways and stuff like that. So those are some things to consider.
I just could go for a second, and then I will jump back in on the call, okay?
What about bumper storage, Clint?
Yeah, if you don't have a way to bend over, if there aren't swappable bumpers where you change the color by the color flap down or something like that, you will want to try to maybe have on your robot cart a location to store your bumpers, the color bumpers, when you're not using them. So if you have blue bumpers on your robot, you will have maybe underneath a location to store your blue bumpers. So that the reason for this is that if you're in queue or you're in line and you thought you were on the red alliance, but come to find out you're actually on the blue alliance, you can actually just change your bumpers in line. You don't have to run all the way back to your pits to get bumpers. This is extremely important when you go there at maybe state in the World Championship, where some type of walk to from the field can be 5 to 15-minute walk.
All right.
Like I said,
It's pretty
make
much
sure you
it
go
for
through
robot
doorways
parts. 'Cause
is a big thing.
it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I mean, some teams literally have a furniture doll with a rope, and some teams use wagons. Wagons are like, Jason, that's kind of what you guys have, right? Like the wagons that they use at like greenhouses and stuff, right? With the big wheels.
Yeah, sort of like a garden cart. So it was in its previous life, and we've built on top of it.
Our
I can't
cart
stress enough
used to be a
having the robot
pallet
up in the
mover. So, anyway,
and the
any
last
questions
thing,
on cart
the last
before
thing you
we?
want, the last thing is to your students trying to carry the robot to and from the field, just carrying it. That's fun for them, and it'll be extremely unsafe. So, but the thing that I will say is, don't be afraid when you get to the field and you need to put your robot on the field. Don't be afraid to pick your robot up, the cart, set it on the ground, and push it out onto the field. Robot wheels. You don't have to do what probably 90% of the people in FRC do, which is get onto the field. I, to this day, don't know why more people don't push their robot onto the field. That's what we do. Like I said, the more we can eliminate need to have students carrying a 150-pound robot, the better and the safest.
We're going to move on to team management mentor tasks. We've only got a few minutes, but we've got a couple really important things to cover. First of all, Woody Flowers was due today at 3 o'clock. Did not submit for that. The deadline is passed. Well, for students didn't submit for it. The deadline has passed. Make it for you for next year if you didn't do it this year. No big deal. It's not like it's required. But Dean's List is due 1 week from today. So you should probably strongly consider applying for the Dean's List Award. We've covered this in weeks past. To you that it's coming up 1 week from today. One of the things that we want to talk about is event volunteers. Per Michigan regulations, you must send 2 volunteers to each event that you participate in. All these volunteers can vary greatly, and you go through a system called VIMS, which we'll go through step by step to people apply to be a volunteer. Now, the volunteer coordinator at each event decides who to put where. You can make a request for a job and tell them specifically which days you're available, times you're available. If you have specific questions or needs with volunteers, then you definitely contact the volunteer coordinator for your events directly. 1 second. Luke just came in. So if you have any specific questions, contact your volunteer coordinator directly because they're the one who decides going where. They're the ones who knows how volunteers they need, which positions have been filled. The volunteer coordinator takes care of all of that. So you're wondering, okay, why do I have to send volunteers? Well, all of them are 100% volunteers. FRC is a complete volunteer-driven organization, and without volunteers, the events do not run. You cannot have someone inspecting robots unless there's a volunteer to do that. You could have queuing or safety glasses or food or registration or anything that is right at all of these events without volunteers. So to alleviate some of the tasks that don't require training, each team provides 2 volunteers. So who should volunteer for these? Number 1, not your students. Your student should be going to the event as a team member and participating, either driving the robot, working on the robot, doing scouting, talking to the judges for awards. What it is, students should not be the ones that sign up to volunteer. Yes, volunteering at an event that you are competing at. So say they do field reset. Tell them, go do Marysville if we're not competing at Marysville. So the option, but the event that you are participating in, don't send your students. Do not send your lead mentors. If you are the drive coach, do sign up also to work the safety glasses table, because you need to be, your first responsibility needs to be with your team. Same with pit crew. If you have your lead electrical mentor and you are having electrical problems, get your electrical mentor off to volunteer. Keep them in the pit. Parents are a great choice. Grandparents are a great choice. Older siblings, friends, whoever, someone that is not going to be in the moment-to-moment operation of your team. There's a relation. I was looking for the number of how old volunteers have to be. I believe they have to be at least 16, I believe, is what I'm going to double check all of that. So things to keep in mind. When you identify who these people are, there's a couple ways that you can do this. The way that we start doing it on our team before we really got a volunteer base, I went into VIMS and looked at all of the jobs, and I said, we're going to choose a day, and I'm going to say, we need 2 people to work the safety glasses table on Thursday. Who's not? And what I did, because if not, you people come and they're like, I have no idea what to choose. This is horrible. So I looked for them, and I chose which days they were going to volunteer, and I said we needed 2 people to do this. Whether or not you do that is up to you. Registering VIMS. VIMS is the Volunteer Information Management System, and it is how the volunteer coordinator keeps all volunteers straight. When our team hosted our district event in 2013, I was the volunteer coordinator, managed about 160 volunteers, all with different schedules. So just the volunteer coordinator an email and being like, hey, be there on Thursday to do safety glasses is helpful. You must open the VIMS system. This helps with your coordinator because it automatically generates schedules, name tags, and all the other stuff, background checks, everything is done through VIMS system. So when creating an account, they'll indicate that they are with your team. Make that they put in the correct team number. This way you will get credit for your volunteers. It does reserve the right through Michigan to not let your team compete if you don't send volunteers. I don't think this has ever happened because you are making effort to your volunteers. I know some of you guys might only have 4 or 5 students on your team and have enough volunteers to send to every single event for 3 days. So it would be a thing where your volunteers just show up for a couple hours on Thursday or a couple of hours on Friday. It's not to say that they have to be there for the entirety of the event. So we're going to link to VIMS in the notes and step-by-step instructions of how to log into VIMS, how to search and select the event you want to apply for, and find roles that are good for you. Now, there's several roles. I'm going to list them all in the notes required training. These roles, you may have someone on your team who may be able to do the training for them, but for the most part, these roles are for people who have been doing FIRST for a while and know how everything works. We have a list in here of roles that we believe are good for volunteers or people who are new to the FIRST community, things like field reset. No, field reset, you'll be doing a lot of bending, a lot of lifting, a lot of carrying, maybe a lot of walking. So if it's like 96-year-old girl's volunteering and she's not very nimble, I wouldn't put her on field reset. Okay, so things like safety glasses attendant, where you literally sit at a table and check safety glasses in and out and ask people to put on their safety glasses. So if you have someone who doesn't like to walk around a lot or wants to sit there for a couple of hours and duty, those are good things. People, frustration, practice field attendant, those kind of things. The host is in the notes for you guys. Select the days that you're available to volunteer. So if you're only available on Thursday, only available on Friday, you can check the days. Also a box in here for additional information. So this may be one of those things that says, sorry, I'll be there at 6:30 and can stay till the end, those kind of things. Volunteer coordinator will contact you, usually via email, so keep an eye open for that with your volunteer assignment. So that's volunteers into VIMS. I don't know how many of you guys have done that already, or if you haven't gotten your 2 volunteers, you need to do that. Anyone have any questions about volunteers? I know there's information at you very, very quickly, but it's all step in the notes for you.
They can volunteers to other events, they don't have to send them the event that they're competing at, right?
I'm trying to get away from this because teams are going to events and want to send everybody, like, for example, events that are like on holiday weekends and stuff. Really low number, and some of the other ones, events that are really far away, like everybody wants to like go to Escanaba but not give any volunteers at Escanaba.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah, probably in a worst case scenario, it is definitely a possibility, and I know your volunteer coordinator and Gail are definitely willing to work with you, especially for small teams. But like I said, if you have questions of that, ask the volunteer coordinator directly, not get the volunteer coordinator, because Gail doesn't keep track of all of that stuff.
We're talking about, potential groups of students that would go to the event to scout and watch, but also could volunteer to help a rookie team that didn't have capacity to have someone volunteer in an event. I guess if the teams out there that need help find volunteers for an event, email and we'll try to see if we can schedule someone from Team Rush to cover your spot.
That is very true. Right. Any questions on volunteers before we move on to event schedule at the event? All right, well, if you have any troubles when you're logged into VIMS, please let us know, send us an email or whatever you want to do to get in touch with us. Just make sure you include your name and your team number when you're emailing or texting any of us. All right, schedule. Each event is a little bit different because some events on the Thursday or Friday may have school or school activities going on. Their schedules might be slightly different. It is very important that you go onto the website that we gave you guys a link to and see what the exact schedule for your event is. I know not all of them have their event schedules up right now, so we wanted to kind of go through a dual schedule for you. The listing on here are general times. So they might be different per event and depending on the weather and the teams that show up and whether or not the field is running on time. These times may change. For the most part, on Thursday, it's going to open at either 4 or 5. Some of them open at 3, some might open at 5, some might open at 4, and it's usually 5 hours on Thursday night. This is going to do load-in. Now, when we're talking about everything in your pit, this is when we are going to highly recommend everything you can bring in have wheels. And don't on having one dolly that you're going to make 4 or 5 trips with. So you're going to park your trailer by a door, and you're going to be expected to pull everything out of it and then pull the trailer away. This is not going. It's basically like a drive-through drop-off. Okay, that's the rule. So everything available for you to load as quickly as possible. Wheels, put it on dollies, put it on whatever. A lot of times the event host also had additional people there to help you unload. I know when our team is done unloading, the first thing I do, any kid that's standing around doing nothing, I say, hey, go out to the loading dock and help somebody carry something. So there'll be people there to help you, but it's best to have everything on wheels for loading on Thursday. There's inspection. We talked a little bit about the pre-inspection checklist last week. Get inspected as soon as possible. Do not go through inspection if you are not ready to go through inspection or you know that you have things that will not pass inspection, but get inspected as quick as possible. At your event, there may be practice matches or practice field may be open. So basically Thursday. It usually goes from about 8 in the morning until 8 at night. The pitch at 8 o'clock, so last inspection, there might be practice matches, then the opening ceremonies, which is usually a half an hour or so of people talking. A lot of times there's a special guest speaker. Then do the game video, maybe do some award or identification of people during the ceremonies. Qualification matches then lunch, then more qualification matches. There's open pit time. The thing that we want to stress to you guys about open pit time is that when there is open pit time, you should be taking advantage of it. There are long days. The kids are tired. You are tired. But you're only given a finite number of hours to work in your robot, and you should be using every minute of it. You should be staying in the pits until pits close. If they're going to be fixed on your robot, they could be doing pit scouting. You have your students acting with other teams. You'd be watching. So if your last match is at 6 o'clock and there's still 2 hours left of the competition, hey, watch the event. You know, go talk to other people. If you're at Kettering 2, come and find engineers. If you're at Rush, whatever events you guys are going to, I know week 1 you'll be in Duluth, but where are you going in Michigan?
Water and Howell.
Howell, go find Jason. Come find us. Do things where you're doing something constructive with that last hour that you're given on Friday. 8 a.m.
So there's been a competition yet that we haven't been kicked out of the pits. Maybe one year where we left like 15 minutes early, but we are all the time.
And Saturday, it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. again, or when everything finishes. Pits open 8 o'clock in the morning, then they do another opening ceremonies on Saturday. Usually opening ceremonies on Saturday, they announce the Woody Flowers finalists and list finalists for that Saturday morning during opening ceremonies. Then there's qualification matches. Do lunch and alliance selection, and depending on which event you go to, some of them do lunch first, then alliance selection. Some of them do alliance selection first, then lunch. Just depends on the flow of rounds and what everything is going on. Cover more about alliance selection probably after bag day is done. We usually do a call on bag day in the first week of events to go over competition things. Then there's elimination matches and an award ceremony, and then the pit close 1 hour after the awards ceremony ends. Award ceremony doesn't end until 9 o'clock, and they stay open until 10. So basically a basic rundown of what your days will be like at competition. Is any questions? Have I talked so that I've overwhelmed you, or have I included everything so that you have no questions at all? Or has everyone gotten
that was a lot of
call?
great information. You've just been talking to yourself for 10 minutes. There's great information in there. And a lot of things will make more sense, I think, when they're there. But just the time frame is going to be great, because I send a newsletter home, make sure all the parents are in the loop about what's up and coming, and having all that information. Great. If that can be included in the notes, that would be absolute Christmas.
Yeah, I actually just read it from my notes, like pretty verbatim from the notes. But on your event schedule page, or on your events page, there should be an event schedule thing that will break it down hour by hour for you exactly what will be on at your event. It has a little bit more detail and a discussion about exactly what things are. like your schedule only say open. Going to, you should be getting infected. You should be doing practice matches. You should be doing these things. So, I think all we have for you guys this week. Do you have any other questions about anything that we have not covered for you, or you want us to cover in future calls, or you have burning questions about right now? All right, that's all we have for you this week. And again, next Thursday, it'll be, like I said, our last call before Flag Day. Then we will probably have a call the week before, 2 weeks from today, which will be first week before week 1 competition. Probably not have calls during the actual competition. We might have one in case there's some clarifications or those kind of things, but for the most part, Thursdays, because teams will be at events, we won't be having another one until usually when we do like week 4, week 5 on like a Tuesday, something like that. Teams that qualify for states on how to get ready for states. So if you have questions about things, feel free to send us an email. Otherwise, we'll talk this week.
State, by the way, has been changed. I know you mentioned it, Brandy, but I don't know if you said where it's at. So
Saginaw Valley State University.
Yep, Valley State. So as soon as you find out if you qualify, well, I guess you win a rookie award, right? You qualify for states. Is that right?
The STAR does qualify you, but only with your team, not with your robot.
Okay. But I was thinking that you should, if you find out, week 2 that you are qualified for states and are planning on going, I would suggest looking for hotel rooms nearby if you're not local to Saginaw. Anything?
All right. Well,
good luck. Full week of build season.
Thank you very much. Have a good